Hi, very good morning to all of you who are watching live our program Mindshare at Dua's Knowledge Portly. And this is the third season of Mindshare program, though we came a little bit later, but yes, never late than before. So today in the Mindshare program, we'll talk about something which we have been witnessing in last 1.5 years. The situation which came to our life, probably nobody would have thought of. But there were people who strive in these situations, but there are people also who thrive in these situations. There are people who started honing their skill set during this entire last 1.5 years. So when adversity comes, people realize their true potential. There are a lot of my friends who actually realize that they can do something better, which they had never thought of earlier. So these adverse situations gives a lot of opportunities of growth also for each and every individual. And there are young minds of India who are planning to do startups, who are planning to start their entrepreneur journeyship. If I give some example, as per the data which was published by Economic Survey of 2020-21, the government of India recognized 41,061 startups as of December 23, 2020, and more than 470,000 jobs were created by these startups all alone. When we talk about starting a startup, doing an entrepreneurship journey, it comes with a lot of self-awareness. It comes with a lot of risk-taking ability. It comes of thinking out of the mind and so on and so forth. So I'm not an expert in the entrepreneurship journey, but today I have one of my dearest friend, Mr. Vicky Dheer, who will talk about the entrepreneurship mindset. There is much more to an entrepreneurship apart from building infrastructure and all, creating funds. It's also about a mindset. So let me first introduce my dear friend Vicky Dheer. So welcome, Vicky. Welcome to the program of Mindshare.
My pleasure.
And thanks so much for being a part of our show. So Vicky works as a strategic advisor to the EdTech startup known as My Class Genie, which is an aggregator and curator of educational and extracurricular courses. Apart from this, he loves spending time on advising startups bootstrap effectively and guiding them on the different strategies. He also works as a managing partner at Viva Impex, and this firm is nearly more than 70 years into this PVC sheeting. So Vicky comes with a, works with a corporate background where he worked with Bank of America as in credit research analyst. And he also he did his graduation MBA from Oxford University. So there are a lot more things which we are going to learn about the man himself and obviously the mindset which he comes along with. I got an opportunity to talk to Vicky for over a period of 1 year now. The sheer strategic mindset that Vicky possesses in terms of guiding entrepreneurs, in terms of creating a mindset of collaboration and growth is outstanding. So with that note, I would once again welcome Vicky to our. Vicky, how are you feeling coming on Sunday morning to the show of Mindshare?
Great, Sanjay. I think it is one of the best ways to spend your Sunday morning by gaining knowledge and sharing knowledge. And thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to a great dialogue here.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's start and let's get moving with some basic thing which came to my mind when I started thinking about this Mindshare program. So as I gave you the figures, which I'll repeat again, that 38,000 startups creating more than 470,000 jobs all alone. And if we talk about India only, India currently houses the world's third largest startup ecosystem. So ecosystem is definitely there. But what do you think? How difficult or easy for anyone to start off an entrepreneurship journey, right? You are involved as a strategic advisor in MCG and partner. Do you find any specific changes in terms of your thought in which you approach towards starting entrepreneurship, or it's like a very simple bread butter kind of a thing? So would like to know more about on that approach.
I think my approach has always been, a lot of the startup space is largely also driven by a fad, a trend. It's cool to start a startup kind of a thing. But, and people look at the success stories, the unicorns that we all know about. and people try to emulate that. But the fact of the matter is that 1 in 10 startups actually become successful. So my personal interest and even the startups that I advise, I try to have them engage in dialogue with startups that are not being successful or that are facing the challenges, because any new startup will face similar challenges. So there's a lot more learnings and a lot more that you can imbibe from a peer who is facing similar challenges, and you don't end up making the same mistake. Because the ones that when we look at success stories, you try to emulate the success. But as a starting up entrepreneur, it is about how you overcome the challenges that you face that can eventually make you successful. So that is a space which I am very, very interested in. I am more interested in the 9 that fail rather than the one that is successful. That is my personal area of interest. That being said, I think being an entrepreneur is great. It is part of the Indian DNA, right from the pawn shop to the Ambanis, all have been entrepreneurs at some point of time or the other. They have to face the same kind of questions vis-a-vis capital rotation, vis-a-vis inventory management, etc. So that is part of the Indian DNA, is what I feel. When you look at a startup, the first and foremost thing is, are you solving a problem? Are you catering to an audience? Is there a requirement in what you're doing? Or you're just trying to copy paste of something that is, gaining traction? Something as simple as delivery. Earlier back in the day, we used to have restaurants which would say, we do home delivery now. And today, Swiggy or your Zomatos of the world have taken that simple concept. So it has to be a simple concept, which is solving a problem. And one of the reasons I got involved with My Class Genie is also because of the fact that there was so much happening in the education space, especially during this lockdown phase, that it made sense that someone comes along and does the job for the student to curate, search, and then aggregate that. So I thought it was solving a problem at some respect, and they've done a great job of the curation aspect. Secondly, you have to have belief in the system, and what you're doing. You have to believe in it yourself. It just can't want to sell, which is another problem that the startup space has seen, wherein entrepreneurs have come in with an exit in mind. Back in the day, family businesses or businesses were done so that they can be scaled and handed over to through generations. Today, you start a business thinking, okay, if I do this, I'll get this valuation, and I'm going to exit it. That's not the most positive mindset to start a business with. You don't get into a relationship thinking about a breakup, right? So you get into it so that it can actually fructify into something bigger and better. So that's another thing which I think entrepreneurs need to imbibe if they want their businesses to grow, because at the end of the day, you're starting a business, and a business is supposed to grow rather than cash out. So those are some of the things which I think is important as far as the entrepreneurial mindset is concerned.
Excellent points, Vicky. I think I really love the idea of like, we always tend to follow the people who are successful, and follow what has been working well for them. But I think most important point which you mentioned is like, the success factors and the success metrics for one startup would be completely different from another.
Absolutely.
And but why they are failing? What is the thing that has brought them down? If we started working on that particular stuff, probably you will not commit the same mistake. I think
Absolutely.
it talks about a lot of collaboration and the positive mindset. Like the way you mentioned that you are starting up a relationship, not by thinking that we are going to break up in that relationship,
Exactly.
but so it's like, and you being a prime example where your business of Viva is going on for 70 years and more.
Absolutely.
So I think that gives a kind of a mindset and a positive outlook also.
Absolutely. So like every business, everything in life has this bell curve. It has a life cycle, right? And it starts off, it reaches its peak. What you do at that peak point is what is crucial. You can either innovate and start a new life cycle. When I take the example of Viva or my family business, it runs for 70 years because at every point when you've reached a peak, you've innovated, you've done something different and started a new life cycle. If you keep harping on that at that peak, then you eventually go through the down cycle and it will eventually, kind of fade out. That is something which you need to imbibe in your life as an individual, as well as a professional or as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I think very valid. If I say in my own words, when you are being successful, when you are at the peak point in your life, in your career, don't get complacent. Don't think that you have achieved a lot in the life. It's about innovating at that point in time so that the journey and the graph which Vicky mentioned, that keeps on moving.
Absolutely.
I think that's an amazing perspective. I think those who are watching this Mindshare, probably young aspirants, would get a lot of things to learn from this perspective. Thanks, Vicky. So when you talk about the mindset, when you talk about the belief, when you talk about different software aspects, when you start up a startup. So next question, which I always ask to everyone, like what is important in this startup? It's the idea of the business which you are going to start, like how lucrative is the idea, or it's about, as you mentioned, as simple solution. It can be as simplest way of doing a problem, but is the execution of the idea which plays an important role in entrepreneurship journey. So what's your thought on that?
I mean, hands down, it's the execution. An idea can be as big or small as the idea. Not to say that big ideas can do not work, but the execution of everything is key. When I give an example of a My Class Genie or a Swiggy or a Zomato, those are very simplistic ideas. 100 people are doing different kind of courses, come and aggregate them and put it into one platform. It's a very simple idea. What it boils down to in terms of success is the right kind of execution. People delivering food to each other, or Ramu ye paper de aao, is what Swiggy is doing, Swiggy Genie is doing, right? So those are very simplistic ideas, but what they've done really well is execution. Uber, Ola, not owning a single car, not having any investment into the asset, but at the same point of time achieving the kind of scale that they have had. Those are simplistic ideas. It's just making life easier for an individual or for a family or for a business. And it completely boils down to execution any day. And execution means that having the right kind of ecosystem, having the right kind of infrastructure, having the right kind of people aboard, not holding on to your equity as something which is dearer than the kind of person that can actually, build on it for you. Many startups actually, also fail because they hold on dearly to the equity and they think that they can do everything. Understanding your limitations and then overcoming those limitations makes it for great execution. So you have to have the right people to do the right job. The person that necessarily has the idea does not necessarily have the capability to execute all aspects of the idea. You have to have that team that can execute it. Don't hold on to that equity because you think that you're going to give away too much because it was your idea. Idea is worth as much as successful execution.
So. Absolutely. Amazing example. We never thought that we need, remembering our childhood when we used to get food from outside. It was like you need to go for 5 kilometers, get the food packed and take it home. And then you have to again put it in, get it warm again and then have the food. And now with the sheer concept, you're sitting anywhere in the world and you just need to place your order and it's getting delivered at your doorstep. I think the execution, as you mentioned, hands down, the execution part, I think most of the time there are people who are very good in terms of creating ideas, giving suggestions and all. But ultimately, it's the team which executes and how well it is executed. I think that also plays a very pivotal role in that.
Absolutely.
So I think amazing thoughts and perspective. We will keep reinforcing this, Vicky, throughout our talk so that audience can get actually application of whatever we are learning into that. Great. So now that you did your MBA from Oxford, and if you ask, many young aspirants are looking to do their MBAs from Harvard, Oxford, and different universities. I did myself from India, from one of the premier institute in India. But I want to understand from a diversified mapping and landscape. So how difficult or how different, I would say, the ecosystem of education when you did it from Oxford compared to the education system which we are currently having in our country. I know every education system has its own positive and outlook towards the students' growth and all. But how do you think it has shaped you as a person in terms of having that diversified outlook?
So, I am probably not the best individual to compare the two because I did both my undergrad from Kelley School of Business in the US and then did my MBA from Oxford, Said Business School. So I don't have that benchmark to compare the Indian education system as far as after you finish schooling with the education system in Europe or in the US. But what I can talk about definitely is the things which actually make those education systems what they are. in my experience, I think I was not a very average student when I was in India. I did very well when I went abroad because I was less on theory, more on practice, and the kind of assignment work or the kind of teaching that happened in the classrooms in the US and in Europe are more practical based than theoretical. So you apply the concepts and you're graded on the application of those concepts, not on the theory aspect. So even in a class on business law, they don't ask you questions on the law itself. They put you in a situation where you have to see which particular act or which particular clause gets implemented in that particular situation. So that makes it more dynamic, I feel. I'm not sure how the Indian MBA system works really, because I haven't really done an MBA here. So that was one thing which really stood out. Secondly, there is a lot of group activity and a lot of knowledge sharing that happens. And especially in an MBA classroom where you have someone in the age of 26 to the age of 45, 50, people with varied experiences and background. So I really enjoyed the group activities because there was a lot of knowledge sharing, mind sharing, to put it in your words, that used to happen in that classroom environment. So added to your growth, and you formed relationships and bonds which carried on for many years after. I'm still in touch with so many of my alumni, both from my undergrad as well as from my master's program, who have become part of my personal ecosystem as far as my individual growth or my, whenever I'm stuck in a situation, I now have access to that group of great minds that will come and always help out and give me the kind of advice that I can then share with others as well. So those aspects actually are things which stood out for me in during my educational experience, both in the US and Europe. I think you can compare the two better, but I mean, I'm not the best
Great.
person to make that
Yeah, I
comparison.
think it's very valid point which you mentioned. I think which I keep telling people in my workshop also is you may read n number of books, you may go through n number of trainings, you may attend n number of workshops. What matters, what make you stand out from the group is application of even an iota of that learning. I
Absolutely.
think it ultimately boils down to the application. You read a lot of books, you read a lot of articles, you read a lot of theories, but until, as you mentioned, like we had an amazing experience when we were doing labor laws in our MBA, and exactly the way you mentioned, it's not about which clause mentioned what and what is the definition of factory and the Factories Act, but it was more about if you are caught up in a particular situation, how you're going to come out of that particular situation using your entire algorithm of the labor laws and all. So I think it's a very valid point which you mentioned, and amazing to get perspective. And yes, I think a lot of application needs to go in terms of a thing. Now that when you have talked about positive mindset, you have talked about learning from the failure, you have talked about how people are going to use this in the application part and all. So what do you think, if you consider entire entrepreneurship journey in totality, how important is the softer aspect of an entrepreneur lies? We can have a lot of people who are very good in designing something, people who are very good in understanding the infrastructure landscape, people who have great connects to create those funding capacity and all. But what is your opinion in terms of the softer aspects, the people management aspects, the life skilling abilities which an entrepreneurship mindset should have?
I think that's a great question, Sanjay, because what we tend to forget is that we are not robots and we are humans, right? In the workspace. And that is something which you need to understand. You're dealing with people here. You're not dealing with robots. And how you handle people, at the end of the day, the growth of any company, be it a startup or a developed company, and how that company evolves, has got to do with the leader in that company or in any particular department, how they handle their people, or what kind of freedom they give their people in expression of thought, in dealing with circumstances and situations. Because we are human, we will all face our own personal hurdles as well as professional hurdles and have those moments of doubt. So, how you deal with those people, how they become ambassadors of your company, of you as an individual, has got to do with is key in the overall growth of anything. And so the softer skills is very, very important. That being said, we often tend to not give it the kind of importance that it deserves. because we forget that our overall growth has got to do with the company's growth as an individual. And so, which is why it's important to consistently upskill yourself. That's a new term which has been coined in recent times, especially during the pandemic, wherein upskilling has become, a fad, but it is a good fad to be in. Because upskilling yourself as an individual on software aspects, like you said, where I may be introverted, and I might not be able to communicate sometimes better. So upskilling myself based on that aspect. You do some great workshops, I believe, on time management and stress management and all of that. So those are very important aspects in upskilling yourself. And then of course there's a technical side, which also plays a big role in doing that. So yeah, so I think it's very, very crucial to being well rounded on the softer skills side. And bigger corporates, I know, give a lot of importance to it as well. But we as individuals should not do it with video off during a Zoom meeting. We should do it knowing that it's adding value to ourselves as well. So yeah, I think that's
Absolutely. I think, and very rightly mentioned, there are not many corporates who spend 30% of their time on learning this software aspect, as you mentioned, because ultimately, starting a journey of an entrepreneur comes with a lot of challenges, comes with a lot of factors which you have to mitigate. How well you are grounded, how well you are able to control yourself in terms of managing that also plays a very important role in that. So again, thanks, Vicky, for sharing on that. So before we close this, there's a very important question which and very pertinent to ask also. A lot of people might be seeing this Facebook Live, and there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs. As a great entrepreneur yourself, what do you think? If I ask, what are the three things or three important attributes that the upcoming and the budding entrepreneurs should adopt, should try to, as in your word, application, they should apply them in their life, which can take them from where they are now to probably a better version of what they can be in future. So what can be those three very salient things, if we can ask Mr. Vicky Dheer to,
so I think
what can
I
be
think, just from the top of my head, and I've seen, the platform that I'm currently advising, my class Genie, do that as well. And being focused on that, I actually push the startups that I advise to do that. Is invest in people. People tend to invest in marketing, and billions of dollars are going into marketing to acquire customers, acquire students, whatever it might be. But I've always been of the belief that invest in people. The more you invest in quality people, the more minds would come on the table, and the value that they bring will be more than any kind of marketing dollars that you might be spending. That is one. Secondly, one of my favorite quotes is actually from The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. That he says in The Merchant of Venice that lend thy ear but reserve thy judgment, which essentially means that as a startup entrepreneur, you will meet a lot of people because you're struggling and you're trying to gain insights. And you'll often feel that, jo isne bola wo correct hai, let me just go ahead and do that. But you cannot go off track every time someone comes and gives you a perspective. Today, we've shared perspectives. A lot of these perspectives may be applicable to some and may not be applicable to some. So all those entrepreneurs that are watching us need to know that they need to lend their ear. So it's good that they are listening in, but they need to have their own judgment as to what works for them and what does not work for them. So that is the second. And third aspect, I would say, is be flexible. Don't be rigid. You're in a startup environment. You will need to pivot every now and then. Don't be rigid that this was the idea that I started with. The ideas will evolve as circumstances evolve, as your landscape evolves. So be flexible. But then again, like I said, invest in people that can help you on that aspect, as well as have the correct kind of judgment in spite of taking all the inputs that can help you out. So I think those are three key things here.
I think that personally for me are great to learn. I think points which Vicky mentioned, like systematic investment in people. Yeah, we invest in portfolio. It's about investing in people. Just giving an example, we are conducting a workshop, and probably every individual in the team has to give a suggestion. And people were looking forward for a particular individual, that the best innovation would come from this individual. So I did something different. I said, everyone will write a suggestion in a piece of paper. without disclosing who is giving this suggestion. Okay, just close the sheet, don't write your name, put it in a fish bowl, and then I'll pick up the suggestion. And then ask the CEO of the company that, what do you think is the best possible suggestion? And once the leadership decided that, Sanjay, this is the best possible suggestion, and everybody thought, yeah, this person might have given this suggestion. But when we figured out the person who was sitting very quietly in the room, probably everyone thought that he's the most introvert person. He cannot talk to people. As you mentioned in one of the answers also, the greatest idea come from that particular people also. So I think the more we invest in all people, get them together in a more of a collaborative way, I think today we might be looking good in doing particular stuff, but you never know that we have some hidden capabilities also, which can be explored when we do more collaboration and all. Second point, which Vicky mentioned, lend the ear to everyone. Listen, understand, but take a judgment basis your portfolio, basis your business proposition. Something may works for you, may not work for other person. And third is being flexible. I always talk about neurological flexibility of your mind, right? You cannot be rigid at any moment of your life, whether you're doing a startup, whether you're doing your business, whether you're doing your service, whatever, you have to be flexible in terms of adopting, in terms of accepting the new things which may exist beyond your phenomenon. I think of a particular thing to be truth. This is my experience. But if Vicky shares something, I should be flexible enough to take it from his perspective. So I think those were amazing points, Vicky, which you shared. And I am 100% sure these are going to add a lot of values for the upcoming entrepreneur in their journey. So before we close, what is your opinion? You have been interacting with Dua's Knowledge Portal for almost a year now, more than a year now. What is your experience about the firm? What is your suggestion for improvement for us so that we
I
can
think you
definitely
guys have been doing a great job. I know a lot of individuals that have engaged with you and your workshops, and they've added tremendous value has been added to them. And I think the different aspects that you touch upon, right from softer skills like time management to the 7 chakras, and also you are associated with My Class Genie as well, and the kind of feedback that we get from that portal and the individuals that have engaged with you through that portal has been phenomenal. And I think you're doing a great service. Apart from doing a business, you're doing a great service to the entrepreneurship and largely the professional community at large, because like I said, training is not a burden. It is an integral part of growth. And you cannot put yourself in that box and think that you're sorted, because even the best minds never stop learning, and that is why they became the best minds. And you're a driving force and an engine in that area. And all the best to you to continue to do the good work. And at any given point of time, any help required, I'm always there. And thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting. It makes it easy when you chat to a friend and a great mind. I think the combination is phenomenal. So I think I was put at ease with that. So thank you so much for having me over. And
thanks, Vicky. I think first of all, thank you to you for coming for this talk show. I think amazing perspective. And as I say, like even our smallest thought can change your mind and the perspective and all. I think you have shared a lot of great things today for the upcoming entrepreneur. And thanks for coming over again. And yes, I'll be needing more of My Class Genie and your help in our journey going forward also. And we'll keep doing more Mindshare programs. Yes, we know we stopped in between, but yes, we'll make it a more ritual, more habitual pattern because there are a lot many individuals. So I remember one quote from my one of my favorite professor from my college, who I used to keep writing 1 or 2 lines, and then I stopped writing. Then he asked, "Why have you stopped writing?" I said, "Sir, you never know kaun padhta hai, kaun nahi padhta hai, who is accepting, who is not accepting." He said to me long years back one thing, that Sanjay, please keep writing whatever you write, even if it's a 1 line or a 2 line or whatever, because you never know, out of 130 crore people of India who might be reading, even if one heart or one mind can change and transform, it's a benefit for you in terms of your progression.
Absolutely.
So I think with that note, once again, Vicky, thank you so much for being part of our show. And it was lovely Sunday morning spent with you and with your thoughts and perspective. And thanks to all those who have been watching us live. Do share your comments, feedback, and suggestions so that we make it more better next time going forward. So with that note, thank you so much. Thanks, Vicky, once again.
Thank you, Sanjay. Pleasure having you. Pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.